Small changes can bring big results when you're learning guitar. Today, I'm going to share the biggest wins from our Facebook group members that came from the tiniest tweaks to their guitar playing. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome, friends, to this episode of the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that will help you become the guitarist that you always wanted to be. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and check out the description for all of the links from the show. Encouragement. It's a big word for me. I try to give you my encouragement every week and let you know that I know that you can be better at the guitar. I've seen it. I know it can happen. And I hope that you can tell that I mean it. I have seen so many people they start beaming with excitement when they start going past what they thought they wanted to do, what they thought was impossible for them to do in the first place on guitar. And if I can do it, and if they can do it, I know that you are so close to that big breakthrough and you can do it too. But what I didn't expect is that encouragement that I give out coming back to me. So I want to thank you for all of the messages, for all your great encouragement and the great feedback that I got from the recent interviews that we've done over the past few weeks. 2 weeks ago, we had Steve Rosen with Tone Chaser. And then last week we had Gretchen Min. I had a lot of fun doing this, but it was great for me to switch seats. I learned a lot as I was going through both of these interviews, and I like learning. And it was fun for me to learn along with you, and I'm looking forward to doing that again, more. How about that? Okay, today I'm interested in something different though. Totally something else. I'm thinking community today. Our community of awesome guitar players. If you didn't know, we have a companion Facebook group. It's called the Play Guitar Facebook group. And I like to get them involved in the podcast any way that I can. And today I asked them the question, what are the little things that made the biggest impact to your playing? Why little things? Well, little things, they're usually overlooked things. They're usually pretty easy changes to make. But all of these things gave our players a really big return for the time that they put into it. So this is the good stuff, right? So what I'm going to do, what we're going to do is I'm going to read you the responses that I got in the group. And then I'm going to go through each of those and give you my 2 cents about those things. Maybe some things that might help you along the way. So let's see here. The first one was from JJ. And JJ said his was taking the time to learn scales. Not really becoming a master at it. He says I'm far from it, but the basics of learning the difference between major and minor and where each fits in. This is still very much a journey, but it's opened up new areas on the guitar for me. Ave said keeping the guitars in arm reach so I can practice whenever I have time. Luis said muting. And David said the power chord shape. This is interesting. He said, and opening up the fretboard with that. It's a small thing that he learned while doing power chords. With the power chord shape, you get the root note and you get the fifth. He says you put one finger below the fifth on the next string and we are back to your root note. It really helped me learn where all the notes were on the fretboard. He also said, when I started, I found a whole bunch of guitar how-tos and went nowhere until I found Lee and started asking why things work before how they work. And did I move forward? Thank you, David. Jason says muting. He also says pick angle, general string control, and lessons. Coke says internalize 16th note patterns by practicing placing the accent on each variant of the quarter notes, scratches for every beat like that. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 E. He says the internalized rhythm is what I think finally made my soloing start to sound musical and creative, even if my note choices were less mature. Dean said triads. And then Moshe said daily practice. Thank you, players, for helping me out with this podcast. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little closer look at all of these small changes so that you can take advantage of them even today if you'd like to. And you can get some well-needed big wins in your guitar life for there. Okay, so what's the first one? Muting. A few of them said this: muting or general string control, taking control of the strings. When you finally get to that point where you start paying attention to what you sound like, you all know this. When we first are starting to learn the guitar, all we're doing is worrying about if we're doing it right. Are we playing the right notes? Are our fingers on the right frets? Most of what we're paying attention to is your fretting hand. We're playing chords. Maybe we're playing scale patterns. We're definitely playing some easy songs. It's all you can do to get these chords and scales out. You think, I'm playing everything right. And then it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like the song. And then you get to thinking that, well, gosh, I'm putting all this time into the guitar and I'm doing it correctly, but it just doesn't sound right. Maybe this isn't working out for me. Well, one of the problems that a lot of people have that is notes ringing out and noises ringing out in between chords, especially in the very beginning. So as we lift the chords up, happens on bar chords too, especially if you're not sliding, if you're going to a different type of bar chord. You get a lot of slop in between there. So the small change in this is really a thinking change. And the change is you starting to think that the guitar isn't just what you need to play, but you also need to pay attention to what you don't want to play. It's both sides of this. This is the first place you should start listening to your own playing, lifting your fingers off the strings and moving to another chord and see if you're hearing some other things that you may not want to hear at that time. You're going to need both hands to start doing this muting stuff. Here, let's do bar chords. So I'll do an A chord and a D chord. Now I'm exaggerating, but you notice after the A, when I lift my fingers up, hear all of that. And then I put my fingers down on the D. What we're going to do is we're going to start muting between these chords. So I might play 1, 2, 3, 4. Now at that moment, notice what I did. I put my side of the palm of my hand down on the strings. That way, when I lift my fingers up, I move them over to the new chord, I have silence. Doing it for each one. But sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you're doing a lot of strumming, right? You're doing a ton of strumming and you might play that A chord and you're not able with your strumming pattern to be able to place the side of your fretting hand on the side of the guitar. What can you do? Start to mute with your fretting hand all on its own. So how we do that is just taking the pressure off of the chord, but leaving your fingers there. So it actually mutes. I'm not lifting my fingers off until all those notes are quiet and then putting the new chord on. And sometimes I do this, especially when I'm playing slide, where I need to use both hands to mute. I might have a note on the low, maybe an open E string I don't want to hear, and then maybe the open E string on the top I don't want to hear. So I might mute with my fretting hand on the low string, and then on my picking hand I might just accidentally on purpose touch that high E string so that both of those can ring true. So how can you practice this? Just take your favorite chord progressions and record yourself and listen and see if they're coming out clean or if you're getting a little bit of noise here and there, some strings that you don't want, and target the two chords around that surround those notes, the one going to the next, and practice those back and forth over and over again, paying special attention to the muting with your picking hand and your fretting hand. So the next thing that was shared, I think David shared this from the Facebook group, is our power chords and using those shapes to help open up the fretboard. So when we do this power chord shape, I'll stay with A since that's what we're using today, right? And this is, if you put your first finger on the E string, 2 frets down and 2 frets over, you put your pinky. That's our octave shape. And then you put your third finger on the A string on the 7th fret. Those 3 notes. What is a power chord? It's a chord that's missing the third, has no third at all. It's just 2 notes, the root and the 5th. It has a strong sound. It works really well with overdrive and distortion. It's something that you would use all of the time. But what's really cool about it is it has the octave shape built in. The outside 2 notes are the octave. An octave is the same note, but in 2 different registers. This shape can easily get you into the middle of the guitar strings. For if you build your power chord on the low E string, this is an A, for example. Well, my pinky is on the D string, 2 frets down, 2 frets over, and it gives me another A. So right there, I know I've got 2 A's. And then also because I'm on the low E string, it's going to be the same on the high E string. So there are all of my A's in this position. 5th fret on the E, 7th fret on the D, and then 5th fret on the high E right there. Very easy to do that. But if I move this power chord over 1, if I built it off of the D string at the 5th fret, this would be a D power chord. And now my pinky is on the 7th fret of the G string. So what I've got from this 2 frets down and 2 frets over shape, I've got my octave right there. So now I know that at the 7th fret on the G string, that's a D. The other thing that is really nice about this power chord shape is the 5th. The middle note of these is the 5th of the scale of that root that you started on. This helps in many different ways. Being able to start learning your arpeggios. You've got 2 of the 3 notes that you need for a triad arpeggio. It's also knowing notes on the adjacent strings. You know that 2 frets down and 1 string over, that's going to be the 5th of that chord. Also, it helps you know where the 5th is. So say if you wanted to play a 5 chord, you know, okay, well, I'll just put my first finger where that 5th is from the power chord, and I am in position. The next thing that the group brought up was pick angle. Okay, so let's talk about pick angle a little bit. The majority of the things that you play are powered by your picking hand. It gets limited attention. You start to play, like we said before, everything is what your fretting hand is playing. All the shapes, all the patterns, all the different things that we're playing, all the cool chords we're playing. We're looking at our fretting hand. And this is pretty much the engine that makes it all happen. What you can do is you can alter your picking to get lots of different tonal variations. And spending some of your practice time on that. You know, we don't have a lot of time to practice, but taking some of that and spending it just on your picking is a very smart thing to do. When we use something that has a nice flat surface here with a lot of it, and it's flat against the plane of the string, the length of the string, we have a lot of surface area that's meeting, and it creates a lot of friction, has a lot of resistance there. Have you ever noticed that at a certain tempo, your picking starts to fall apart? Everything's cool, but at some point you get the clicks. What's happening is you're hitting a lot of resistance when that flat side of the pick is pushing against the length of that string. And this isn't an issue at slow tempos, but you have extra time at a slow tempo to adjust for all of that resistance. But the faster your tempos go, the less time you have and the more that you're going to get those clicks. And the more you angle the pick, the less surface comes in contact with the strings. Right here on the low string, if I'm playing it flat on there, has a nice warm big tone, but it's fighting me a little bit. And if the faster I go, it gets choppy right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to angle my thumb down to the ground. At that point, the pick is hitting the strings with the sides of it, not the flat part. And I can play it at much faster speeds. Now, is it as full sounding? No, it's a little sharper sounding, right? But what ends up happening is when you are hitting it on the sides of the pick, it skates over the top of the string. It's not pushing the string, it's going over top of it. In fact, the string is staying where it is, the pick is doing the moving. And you can play it very If I try to do that flat, you can hear the fighting there. Let's talk about accenting 16th note patterns and placement of notes. I've been handling a lot of rhythm content lately. Done a few podcasts about that. And we're talking about what you play versus when you play. We spend so much time working on what we play that rhythms always get left in the cold. So slow tempos are something that many people think, oh, it's going to be easy. The song is so slow. I can just play it perfectly. Slow tempos can be a lot more difficult to place notes between the beats. You will rush or you will lag less when you play your eighth notes, quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes, when you can fill in the spaces with internalized, and I think that's what Coke said, internalized 16th notes, being able to hear the notes in between the beats. If you listen to just a basic metronome, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you know 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E, and you know that that's how it's going to be subdivided. Say you have to play something on the and or something on the E, on one of those different 16th notes in between something like that. If you don't have a good internal idea of where they all fit, it can be very difficult. And the slower it gets, the more time you have to make mistakes. So instead of just practicing your quarter notes and eighth notes, making sure you practice 16th notes can really get you into the groove of subdividing beats and being able to play right where it's supposed to be. Also with 16th notes, we call them 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E. And this is our beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 16th. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E. And we're taking every beat and cutting it into 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, right? So one of the things that's really helpful with this is something called accents. Accenting one of those beats. If I just played 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a, so every time I was on the first of each 4 beats on the 16th notes, I hit the chord, and then the other ones I let loose, made it quiet. That's accenting that first beat. You could also do it just by volume. So every time I hit that note, it was a little bit louder. You can do it with an effects pedal. Every time you hit one of those 16th notes, you can turn your effects pedal on and turn it off. There's lots of different ways that you can accent these notes. But what ends up happening is you don't have to just accent the first beat. You can accent each one of those. So if I was going to accent the second note of each group of 4 would sound like this. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. If I was to do the third, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a, very different sound than the first 2. And what if I accented the last one? 1E and a 2E and a. So what if I strung all of those together? What would that sound like? 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Yeah, so they can get very interesting the more you combine those things. And I was just accenting one note of each of the groups of 16th notes. You could accent more of those if you wanted. But there's so many different ways that you can change these things up. The next thing that the group shared was learning triads and what a big deal that was. And you got a little bit of time and a lot of results from that. Learning triads on the guitar, that's the place where the fretboard and learning about harmony meet. It's a good place to do that. So let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about what happens when you first started to play guitar. Most likely you learned a few open position chords, and then you might have learned after that a few easy songs to go along with that. That happens for a while. Then you graduate to bar chords. Okay, I'm moving on. I'm opening up the fretboard a little bit. I'm moving out of open position. You learn your bar chords, and then what happens? You probably learn a few easy songs that use bar chords, right? You're cooking. At that point, you go to pentatonic scales, usually just one of them, pattern 1. You learn the 1 4 1 3 1 3 1 3 1 4 1 4, and you try and put it on every song you can possibly do that, right? Then you say, okay, I've got some stuff down. Let's go over to, one of these tab sites and start learning your favorite songs. Everything's been going good up to this point, and usually this is where things start to slow down quickly. And this is where the frustration comes in. You might be thinking, this isn't going well at all. What is the problem? The problem is that everything you've done up to that point, think about it, it's all just memorizing patterns that someone else showed you. None of it actually makes sense to you right now. You're not understanding why you're using any of it. You're just doing it because someone else told you to do that. Except for some reason, when you go and learn these songs from one of those tab sites, the songs themselves sound like they make sense. Someone who wrote that song knew what they were doing. We think, I don't know why this sounds good, but I'm just doing what they tell me to do. Well, you might tell yourself, well, I just must need to learn more. There's something that I'm missing. So then it's off to learning more songs that don't make sense, learning more licks that continue to not make any sense. What you're missing is the idea of strong notes and weak notes, why some notes sound good over a certain chord when other ones don't, and why that changes every time the chord changes. There's something that gels all of these things that you've already been learning together, and that's understanding harmony, why some notes sound good together. And the things that you've memorized so far, they are not going to help. So understanding strong notes and weak notes. Other words for that are chord tones and passing tones. That's a little bit more descriptive. The majority of popular songs that you're going to learn to play, they don't use very complex harmony at all. You can learn these things. I know you can. And you can actually visualize the harmony of these songs and how the scales and the chords of those songs are related right on your fretboard by taking a look at triads. Triads are 3-note chords: major, minor, augmented, and diminished. And finding those notes on the guitar links the chords you're playing and the scales you're playing together. If you like to apply this and make sense of everything that you're already playing, I can help you with that. Have an application for coaching in the description. How about easy access to your guitar? This was a great one too. This is the simplest one. We always hear out of sight, out of mind. To me, life always has something that's going to fill up your time. Why not control what that's going to be? If guitar is something that's important to you, why do you let other things get in the way? What's easy to access usually is what you're going to be spending your time with. You can access your phone pretty easy. The television is always easy to access. Video games. Do you think that those things could expand and take up all your free time? They usually do. But do you also think that spending all of your time on the phone or on television or playing video games is going to enhance your life and move you closer to your goals? How about this? Let's put the guitar in there. Let's give it a fighting chance. Let's keep it out just like the phone and the TV and the video games. Let's keep it open and let's use it. Getting comfortable with your guitar takes time. And the more you play it, the more you learn about it. And the more you learn about it, the more you realize the strengths and weaknesses of a certain guitar. And then what can you do? Take some time to experiment with the guitar. Experiment with the setup, experiment with the pickup heights, experiment with different sounds, and make it just right for you. This may not ever happen for you if your guitar is in the case most of the time. Daily repetition on the guitar 100% builds great guitarists, and encouraging daily practice by eliminating a big obstacle. If you can take away a few steps of going and getting the guitar every time you need to use it, things are going to happen more and more, and you're going to spend more time with the guitar. And then you can actually take advantage when you have some unexpected free time. You can get some stuff done, spend some time on the guitar where you didn't know that you were going to do it. Wasn't even planned. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about today that was provided by our Facebook group members, that's a small, easy thing that changed their playing for the better, is taking the time to learn scales. So I have a question. What's the problem with scales? Why do people have an aversion to that? All it is a group of notes. And they have a certain quality when you play them together. If you're just playing chords, guess what? You're already playing these notes. You've memorized some songs, and these notes are part of it. Let me ask you a question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? I've asked that a million times on this podcast. I'm sure you've heard it. And I relate it to scales and chords. What came first, the scale or the chord? The scale came first. The notes in the chords are there because of the scale, the degrees in each of the scales. These notes are the building blocks of chords, and they will help you understand why chords sound the way they do. We have a visual instrument, and when you learn scale patterns across the fretboard, they're going to open the thing up for you. You're going to see the chords that you're already playing in these scales and think all of a sudden light bulbs go off. You get it. Oh, this is all the same stuff. It's just different ways of playing the same group of notes. Understanding scales is equally important for rhythm and lead players. If you don't ever desire to play a guitar solo, that is okay. You still should know your scales. Why? Because when you want to graduate from playing the chords that other people show you to building your own, you're going to need to know what the different notes are and how they work together. I want to thank the group today. They helped me out. This was a lot of fun. I'm getting a good idea of the simple things that people want to pass on. They want to tell other people, hey, try a little bit of this. It's going to help you. It's going to make everything work better. I do have something for you. This is my Big 4 scale pattern worksheet. And when you master this worksheet, you're going to be able to play all your scales, all of your major pentatonic, minor, and minor pentatonic scales all over the fretboard. That's over at playguitaracademy.com /Big 4 scale worksheet. And I had a great time today, and I'm going to call it that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. Make sure to hit the button below to subscribe to the show. And if you have benefited from this podcast, please leave a favorable Apple Podcast review. It is the best way to make sure that we get this very valuable content to more guitar players around the world. And if more help, structure, and results in your guitar playing sound good to you, what are you waiting for? Play Guitarist Academy is here. Join the world's most exciting and carefully planned guitar system. And together we will build your online home base for guitar. Thanks again. And I'm going to see you on a very special episode next week.